All right, then. One last time in 2017, and let's wrap things up, I guess, with some final thoughts on the year. But before we do that, let's talk a bit about other motorsports too. And it's been a big year all around the world when you look at MotoGP, the V8 supercars here in Australia, WEC, Indy 500, all the things that we've tried to keep abreast of. And I guess start quickly with MotoGP. It was another classic year with Marc Marquez ultimately taking out the title versus Andrea Dovizioso for Ducati, who really stepped it up this year. And there was some hope there for Dovizioso to win it, but unfortunately couldn't get the job done in the end. And then similarly in the V8 supercars, we had Jamie Whincup winning a seventh title against Scott McLaughlin, who really took it to him this year for DJR Team Penske.
Yeah, that one, if anything, lived up more so to the billing than Formula One. It a bit of a sad anticlimax on the final day, the final lap, the way that played itself out. But certainly two worthy adversaries there on either side of the Holden and Ford divide. And for Scott McLaughlin, it was a near miss, but his time is still coming. And for Jamie Whincup, just absolute vindication that he keeps turning up with that motivation, and such a clinical machine is Triple Eight. Another title really solidifies its reputation as one of the best operations of all time.
Yeah, you could say that. More comparison to Mercedes, you could say anyway, with Triple Eight, the Red Bull Holden racing team there. And Whincup just under the radar really this year, just snuck it through, as we said last week, and 4 wins to his name, and then of course being in the right place at the right time in the final race in Newcastle, whereas Scott McLaughlin just had a dogged outing altogether, and just he won the race on Saturday, but then Sunday he was hit with 3 penalties, and then just couldn't get into that 11th position that could guarantee him the championship win.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. Probably after day one, it was really up against it for Jamie Whincup, but he didn't give up that hope. And McLaughlin just had a stinker of a day on the Sunday, and he did the work to get himself into position, but he couldn't quite close the deal there with that ultimate fateful collision with Craig Lowndes.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess there was some news that came out yesterday in regards to the team investigating the pit lane speeding penalty. Not that it'll change the outcome at all, with the championship already just set in stone, but for their own clarity as to why that penalty came, whereas they believe that shouldn't have been the case anyway. But MotoGP, I guess it was a bit annoying not to see some more competitors up there that had inconsistencies, the Yamahas in particular, with Valentino Rossi and Maverick Vinales. But, for someone like Dovi, who was not really regarded as being like a Marc Marquez or a Rossi or a Lorenzo, for him to win 6 races this year and be in the thick of the championship until the end of the year on a bike that isn't exactly the most openly rideable, you could say.
The Desmo Demiti, whatever.
Yeah, the Ducati, that is. It's a fair effort. That's all I could say. It's one of those real good stories of the year, I think, across all world motorsport. And it would have only been made sweeter if he actually won the title in the end, which, unfortunately in Valencia he lost out. He crashed.
He gave it his all, and hopefully he can carry that momentum. He's just really announced himself there, and even that longer term talk that it could put himself on that radar for other teams if there is a berth opening up. Who knows what Ducati can do if they can sustain it themselves, and Jorge Lorenzo, the onus is now on him to deliver, and he still has that caveat there of wanting to put one up on Valentino Rossi in their own rivalry, so he's clearly got his work cut out. And for Dovizioso, really I think he's just got to be proud of it regardless, from 1 or 2 victories overall to now 7 or 8. It's really just put him on that radar, and just having someone else to talk about outside of that normal triumvirate of Marquez, Rossi and Lorenzo in previous seasons.
Yeah, so I guess at the end of the race didn't seem too... Well, you could see the disappointment on their faces, but he sort of knew that he might have been a bit over his head if he thought that he could win it. But at the same time, you've got to have that hope and determination that you can actually do it. And David beating Goliath, it's a story, it's a narrative that in all sports is still time honoured and loved no matter where you go. And I guess it wouldn't have been the same in supercars though, because Penske, DJR, McLaughlin, they're pretty strong as it was this year. But I guess the favourite story out of the year in supercars, David versus Goliath, in terms of that, was David beating Goliath at Bathurst, the mountain goat, as he calls himself, David Reynolds, taking that Bathurst 1000 victory for Erebus Motorsport, who we know is a small team which has been struggling financially for the last, pretty much since they came into the sport. And, you know, the transformations that they've undergone at the start of last year, coming over from Queensland to Victoria, switching over from
to Holden,
Mercedes chassis to Holden chassis, and pretty much starting with a whole new team. It's to then add a Bathurst 1000 victory to that. It's one of those achievements that they'll never ever forget, and I think they're a team that are on the rise for next year, and we might see David Reynolds, you know, be a force perhaps consistently, you know, going for wins, maybe not for the championship as such, but, you know, being able to take wins here and there, podiums crucially as well. So
yeah, I think maybe even who knows how things will play out, but when Craig Lowndes departs, David Reynolds might be at the front of that queue to take that seat at Triple Eight Holden Racing Team.
Well, it might be a bit too intense for Joker David there. He likes to have a joke, does Reynolds. So, you know, I don't know if Roland would appreciate that or not. But it would be great, yeah, to see him move up back to, you know, it was a bit unfair the way he was dismissed from ProDrive or FPR at the end of 2015, even though he finished third in the championship. But, you know, Erebus, he's a team leader. You know, we talk about him as being the joker of the pack and just generally stuffing around. But, you know, behind the scenes, he seems to be a real true team leader, and he's really galvanized this outfit along with the team owner, Betty Klemenko. So it's one of those things where, you know, when they can punch above their weight, they can prove that they're better than the established teams, the ones who are better funded as well. It just goes a long way in, you know, creating those stories which people get so fond with. So, but other highlights, I guess, from supercars this year, Sandown 500, it was that historic win there for Cam Waters and Richie Stanaway. Of course, we got the news that Richie Stanaway will be that fourth car there at ProDrive next year. So, you know, two young guns. And you said this previously that, you know, supercars really next year is going to see a lot of those young guns on the grid, you know, and with that established order or the older hands moving out finally. So, you know, having Richie there as well, along with young drivers like Chaz Mostert and Cam Waters, it's really exciting to see for ProDrive.
Yeah, just that natural evolution, the order of things. It really is timely. So there's not a stagnation, and I think Richie Stanaway is more than prepared. So he's one of those rarer cases where you can expect him to be delivering results from the outset.
Could be from the outset, depends on whether the car's all good too. It also means they've got a fifth Kiwi driver on the grid too next year, so, you know,
antipodian invasion, it's becoming
taking over the Kiwis, and we've got Kiwi in F1 too, which is going to be exciting to see in Brendan Hartley. So yeah, they're doing quite well in World Motorsport, it seems, at the moment. Any particular highlights for you out of supercars in particular, or just the
normal suspects there. Bathurst, of course, it again lived up and just got the title fight we were after, so I think that's all that you can ask for.
Yeah, and in particular, you know, I guess not probably happy with the way Craig Lowndes has fared this year. Winless season for him, and don't think he even was on the podium.
Once
he might have had one podium, but yeah, it's just hard to fathom that, you know, it's been an unsuccessful year for Craig Lowndes, and whether that continues for next year, we hope not, because he is still a competitive driver, and we hope he's not past his use-by date.
Yeah, I guess he's got that 2-year commitment. If he feels he's up to it, he'll see that out. But otherwise, he's a kind of individual who'll acknowledge that it's time to move on. But hopefully he can rediscover that touch, if not fight for titles. And he's still got another Bathurst in him and as a main game driver.
Well, as a he'll go a long way as a co-driver, I'm sure, and be, well sought after, unless Roland Dane's already shoehorned him into co-driving duties for Triple Eight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll see what happens next season.
Yeah, and while we're on Triple Eight as well, and link it in with a bit of Porsche news too. So Matt Campbell, who was driving with Shane Van Gisbergen in the Enduros this year, he was doing Porsche Super Cup there, following the F1 circuit this year, and I think he finished third in the championship overall or something, or just narrowly missed out because he missed one weekend because of endurance duties. And he had a swag of wins to his name. He won in the final round in Mexico, and next year he'll be going on to do some GT driving with Porsche. So really moving up is Matt Campbell, and of course still being in touch here with Australia with his supercar endurance duties.
Yeah, keep the options open. If he has a great future in Europe, then he's really made the most of it. And if not, again, that seat at Triple Eight, it could be vacant in a couple of years if he wants to come home.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, I'm sure he'll go pretty far when it comes to Porsche in Europe with the GT racing. And it's kind of sad in that way that Porsche have left the World Endurance Championship as far as the LMP1 program is concerned, because you would have seen Campbell as being one of those guys to perhaps slot in the future there if they had stayed. What if you said this off air a while ago, what if he pursues Formula E when Porsche go into that and does a bit of open wheeling? That would be great to see as well. But, Campbell could have been like Mark Webber there in the Porsche if they had stayed in LMP1. And I guess while we're on the topic now, just disappointment, I guess, that Porsche have to depart. They were able to win Le Mans this year. Brendan Hartley, of course, the Le Mans winner with Timo Bernard, and, of course, Earl Bamber, this two-time Le Mans winner now. And then, of course, another championship to add to that belt as well for Hartley and Bernhard and Bamber. It's hard, it's a mouthful getting all three of the three drivers that you've got to get in their names in. But yeah, there you go. So the second title for them, and then for Porsche signing off the way that they have, since 2014 they've won back-to-back, well, not 2014, but since 2015 they've won back-to-back championships. They've won all three Le Mans in that time as well. So they're signing off on a successful note, but, they'll be sadly missed from endurance racing as Audi is.
Yeah, they'll all go their separate ways. At least the most prominent case there, Brendan Hartley, it's probably opened that door to Formula One belatedly. So I'd say that really these things, they work themselves out in strange circumstances, and who knows with Porsche in Formula E, that ostensible commitment they'll have there from 2019, 2020, that you might see those refugees get a new lease of life if they're prepared to be patient for the next 18 months or so.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of other racing for them to take part in anyway, GT racing around the world, or if you want to do IMSA or something like that. So, and that's, I guess that just goes to show the growth of these other categories around the world too. Just going back to what you said a few editions ago, in fact, that, while F1 is the ultimate goal, if you don't get there, there's still plenty of racing that you can do. And Bathurst 12 Hour is an event that, by going there this year and seeing it in person, the growth that it's had over the last few years is just astonishing. And the fact that, you get so much, so many international drivers, with factory teams coming, no longer just customer outfits. Oh, here's a car, you can do what you want with it. It's like Porsche, they want to bring their proper engineers and everything. Audi come with a factory presence. Mercedes come with a factory presence. So McLaren as well. It just goes to show you how these small events are really taking off. And 12 Hour again, looking forward to going there next year again and seeing who comes as far as drivers and teams are concerned. It's going to be one of those events that'll be quite marquee when it comes to world motorsport in a few years' time.
Yeah, that stature, it's really on that global map now, and it works hand in hand with those other categories. They can all get the best out of each other.
As I say, perhaps Fernando Alonso could look at coming to Bathurst in a few years' time if he's not happy with where he is, or just choose to do it pre-season.
Yeah, he's up for anything at this point.
Yeah, and actually, while we're speaking of all that convergence and whatnot, I mean, the big news this year of Walkinshaw no longer being called HSV Racing Team, but next year there'll be the Walkinshaw Andretti United Autosports or whatever, so combining with Andretti from the US and, of course, Zach Brown, who owns United Autosports, the McLaren team boss. So, how many opportunities could open up there for Bathurst 1000 drives for some of Andretti's IndyCar drivers, and then even for someone like a Fernando Alonso, I say, who's still on Zach Brown's books at McLaren.
Yeah, the combinations are endless, so we'll see which input they have over the next few months.
And speaking of Alonso, like, seeing him do Indy this year as well was a big highlight. Like, he was in contention for the win. Unfortunately, a Honda reliability failure took him out, as you'd expect. And Takuma Sato, his teammate, actually won that one. So he, since he's left F1, he's had a bit of success, and I guess adding an Indy 500 to his CV is something that is quite fascinating. And it was quite interesting when we saw in Japan on the podium when Lewis Hamilton tried to accost the ring off him, saying, "Oh, where do I get one of these?" He's like, "Oh, you have to win the Indy 500." It's like, "Oh, I don't want to win the Indy 500. I want the ring."
Yeah, it's Hamilton.
There's some things
gratification.
There's some things that money can't buy, unfortunately, Hamilton. So
maybe that's where he's now plotting. He's thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll have to sacrifice F1 to make this ring happen if he's that keen on his bling.
Well, he's hanging out with Conor McGregor at the moment, so who knows? He might take up UFC fighting for all we know. That would be interesting. Don't see Hamilton lasting at all in the octagon, so...
No, who knows with this individual, but he's done it all, so we can't be too much of a payout on him.
No, I mean, I guess that's the thing. Like, when we look back at the year, Hamilton... He may not be the best character, you could say, as far as, most desirable or whatever. He doesn't really paint the picture for the sport in a great way. But you look back at all those famous world champions, your Sennas, your Schumachers, and all that. They weren't perfect guys. They all had their flaws about them, and Hamilton has his own flaws, and we can be critical about him as much as we want, but he will go down as one of those drivers that will be remembered as one of the greats in the sport. 4 world championships, polarizing figure as well, and I guess whilst his actions on track sometimes don't speak as much as you'd hope they would, for him, it's a lot of the off-track stuff that really define him. Unlike a Senna, who his on-track stuff were really the things that really got him in the headlines, and same with Schumacher to an extent. It's still difficult to deny Hamilton from being that great driver that he is being forecasted to be or already is. So, there's a lot of criticism I could say about him now. I could just say, well, when it comes to passing people, he's not very good and all that. So, but, let's leave it. And, it's his championship this year. He deserved it. He made the least mistakes, unlike last year. And, that's the thing. Like, last year he made plenty of mistakes. He paid the price for it, and we were going to criticise him for it. This year, he didn't make mistakes. He was better than Vettel for the majority of the year, which eventually won him the championship. And there you go. You don't make the mistakes, so you're not going to be given the criticism.
He's done it his way, and really, he took those opportunities. So he's the worthy champion once again. Yeah.
And before we end, anyway, I just want to quickly pause to remember as well passings that we had, a few of them this year. John Surtees at the start of the year, the only man to have won championships on both 2 wheels and 4 wheels. The sad news that he passed away at the start of the year. Then I guess the 2 tragic accidents that we happened separate, of course, as well. Nicky Hayden and Angel Nieto, who was not 13-time Grand Prix motorcycle champion, but 12 plus 1 because he hated the number 13. So 12 plus 1 for him. And then for Nicky Hayden, I guess it's on a more personal level more sad because you look back, because the 2006 season, which he won the championship, is one that we can look back at and saying, that I don't know if you watched it at the time, but watching it at the time, and it's like, this is so great. And the fact that we had Valentino Rossi beaten by this guy who isn't, regarded as to be as good, but, he managed to do it in the end. And just a sad loss of life there with that bicycle accident that happened in the year. And it's just difficult not to get a bit sad about Nicky Hayden in particular. But, that's what happens. But all in all, any final words for 2017 motorsport? Life in general, if you want to share some words about that. It's been a pretty hectic year all up. So yeah,
I think there's always the desire for more, but at the same time, it's good just to be able to pause and put that line under it all and hope for bigger and better in 2018. It's certainly delivered in abundance, so we look forward to seeing some more evolution. And I guess on the personal level with the podcast, it's been a year of consolidation here, and hopefully we continue to improve our own standards again and bring you even more commitment ongoing into the future. But we've achieved a lot, I would say, this year, and having that the routine down pat. We hope that everyone who's tuned in has enjoyed the show that we've put on.
Yeah, exactly. And I echo that sentiment the same. And be sure to stay with us, though, over the off season on Facebook. So the links will be available in the video and everything. So be sure to follow them. We'll try and post as much content as we can, even though, it's not going to be much going on over the next few months. But yeah, come pre-season time, we'll be back as always, and we'll start podcasting again. We'll start writing again. And, I guess I was going to say that it's time for me to go into carbon freeze or whatever for the next few months, but actually it's summertime, so let's get out and have some fun. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in to this little CD series of videos. Thank you so much for tuning in all year. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to being back and better for 2018. So, ciao.